Vice President Shatima to join global leaders at AU-EU Summit in Angola.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall revisit Safe School Initiative yet again.
The recent abduction of schoolgirls in Maga, Kebbi State has reignited national concerns over the escalating wave of banditry and insecurity, particularly across Nigeria's northern region.
And revisiting the Safe School Initiative on Good Morning Nigeria last Wednesday, guests agreed on one thing: Nigeria needs a far more protective and coordinated approach to protect vulnerable communities and prevent these recurring attacks.
That's true, Jumai. Armed gangs have consistently targeted schools in the north. In the latest Kebbi incident, 25 female students were abducted and the vice president tragically killed.
Vice Principal.
Vice Principal.
And just last Friday, in the early hours of the morning, an unspecified number of students from St. Mary's Catholic Private Boarding School in Papiri, Agwara local government area of Niger State, were also kidnapped.
These attacks have heightened fears in states such as Kebbi, Sokoto, Zamfara, Niger, and now even Kwara, all of which have recorded a rising pattern of violence.
And the Kebbi State Commissioner for Information and Culture, Yakubu Ahmed Bunnim Kebbi, who joined us on the conversation last time, stressed that while government reports efforts are underway to rescue the abducted girls, what Nigeria desperately needs is a comprehensive national security strategy that tackles the root causes of this insecurity.
Security analysts continue to call for stronger physical and procedural safety systems across Nigerian schools, especially in high-risk areas, to protect students and staff.
Now, with this latest incident in Niger State, the Federal Ministry of Education has now shut down about 41 unity schools in states such as Niger, Katsina, Plateau, Yobe, and Kebbi have also closed schools across various local governments.
But the big question remains, is shutting down schools really the solution? And what happens to the education of thousands of pupils and students, many of whom were preparing for first-term examinations?
That's the big question we'll be asking our guests, and perhaps this is to allow space for security operatives to go after the bandits, as 51 of the missing students of the Catholic school have now been returned.
Similarly, all 38 worshippers taken from Eruku in Kwara State have also been rescued.
Well, our panel of discussants will unpack all of these as we revisit the Safe School Initiative.
Indeed, it's a conversation you don't want to miss. I'm Ademola Adeoye. Thank you for starting your day with us. We are live on the network service of the NTA.
Thank you for starting your day and your week with us. I am Jumma Yusuf. Chukudi Okologbaja will join us later for the newspaper review. But first, the headlines with Mina Daniels. Good morning. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA, and to provide a background to push this conversation, on revisiting the school initiative, here is an excerpt from our previous conversations, but put together by Timothy Yusuf.
We started with the Safe School Initiative under Gordon Brown, former British Prime Minister, as a result of the first Chibok girls abduction, which attracted a lot of international attention. A group of concerned stakeholders, organized through the Gordon Brown to bring assistance to Nigeria. They came with some funding. As of that time, they were able to survey some schools and transfer, especially girls, from areas that are heavily impacted by security to other schools. They were able to achieve some relative this, but like I said, that was an internationally driven, something. But I think that Safe School Initiative by Gordon Brown didn't last long. Probably maybe he didn't get a lot of buy-in. So when that finished again, unfortunately, schools again were being abducted. Kankara, Chibok, and the rest, and so on and so forth. So the federal government entered into a collaboration with other international partners in what has now come to be called Safe School Declaration. Okay. In 2019, the Nigeria ratified that document, entered into it. It was brought by the then acting Minister of Education, Adamu. It was signed physically by the late President Muhammadu Buhari.
But I know for sure that the Kebbi State government has done quite a lot, even long before the incident in Maga. The Kebbi State government has been privy to quite a number of intelligence reports across the state and even beyond. I want Nigerians to know from the beginning that we've been having problems of bandits coming in from parts of Zamfara and Niger State and even Sokoto State. We don't have any single cell of bandits in Kebbi State. What they do is to infiltrate from their comfort zones in Zamfara and infiltrate, come in and perpetrate their evil and rush back. But the issue of soldiers not responding or leaving the school, I'm not privy to that. But I know for sure that the Kebbi State government, since the coming of this administration 2 years ago, there has never been any government in Kebbi State that has been as responsive as this government in terms of responding to security issues.
I've visited some schools where even they don't have internet facilities. For such portal, you need an internet facility to operate. I've visited a school where even the principal is still using not Android phone. So how can he? So some of all these things, just like he said, is that if we prioritize our attention to some of then it will help to, and it will provide deterrent. Like the commissioner was talking about, not when they have been adopted, we start chasing. These things will serve as deterrent.
It's
preventive.
It's to alert. It's to alert.
Do you know that these bandits, before they strike anywhere, they do surveillance too? Mm-hmm. They know. So when they know that, look, it's like this school, they are very cautious of these things, they will change their plans. They will change their direction. But when they know that, anything can happen here, and they have an insider that is guiding them, because that is one very important issue. They don't come to communities and operate and live easily. They have insiders. I have said it that there are people who are crisis beneficiaries, who benefit from all this. We're talking about this adoption. Some people are smiling to the banks from the adoption.
Thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for giving us excerpts from our conversation last week, Wednesday, on the Safe School Initiative. That was the first conversation we had last week, Wednesday, and the guest, the excerpts there. With that, we have a guest in the studio to revisit the Safe School Initiative again today. And let me introduce Dr. Kabiru Adamu. Is a security risk management expert. Dr. Adamu, it's good to have you again join us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Pleasure is mine.
All right.
It's good to see you. Yeah. And we also have joining us via Zoom, if he's there, from Lagos, Dr. Yahaya Getso, security intelligence and investigation expert. And we are also expecting, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, but the name is Yahuza, not
Yahuza Getso, Yahuza Getso. Dr. Yahuza Getso is joining us from Lagos, and we're also expecting the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps representative. We've sent our invitation, and I hope they'll be here before the end of the program. Thanks.
Actually, we need them to come and give us the latest updates on the rescue operations that is ongoing. Now, Dr. Adamu, let's get your perspective on the latest development, especially in schools right now. There seems to be a spike, in the attacks, on schools, especially those in the vulnerable areas. What's your perspective? What do you think is happening?
Okay, in simple terms, I think it's a reflection of the vulnerability that exists in our schools. Targets, in this instance, young people ranging from the age of 11, 12 up until depending if they're in tertiary institutions, to their early 20s, are gathered in one place. And it's a place that is considered a soft target. The vulnerabilities are high. The kind of protection that should exist in those educational institutions, unfortunately, don't exist. So the number of threat actors that we have, and unfortunately, we are seeing an increasing number of threat actors. When Chibok happened, the number of threat factors were probably around 10. Today, the number of threat actors that we have are almost about 80 within the country.
That's high.
Yeah, it has increased. The second factor is that they are able to collect ransom, because usually the motive is economic. When they carry out the abduction of these students, they demand for ransom, and sadly, the ransom is paid, and so that provides an incentive for the abduction, in the future. Number three is the very thin deployment of security forces in the rural areas. In the urban areas, you probably see a relatively, robust security presence. But as you move further into the rural areas, you see this very thin deployment. So that also increases the vulnerability. Number four is the existence of mountainous and forested parts that ordinarily we can call ungoverned spaces. Okay. But then they are not necessarily ungoverned, because they belong to either the federal, if it's a forest reserve, or if it's just a forest, it belongs to the state government. Constitutionally, there should be governance there. But sadly, we are working to a situation where a lot of these locations do not have adequate government presence. So what happens is this threat actors, depending on who they are, abduct these children and then go into these forest areas, keep them, start the negotiation process, collect the ransom, and then release these kids before they go to the next one. The fifth element, which I think is also very important now, depending again on the threat factor that we're discussing. In the Northeast, it is ideological non-state armed groups, the Jamaat al-Ahl Sunnah al-Dawat wal Jihad, or the Islamic State in West Africa province, or even Ansaru. Or if it's in the Northwest, it could be Lakurawas, or Mahmudawas, or Darul Salam. Now, depending on which one we're discussing, okay, if it's the ideological one, they are against Western education. So that could be an incentive why they will attack. If it's the bandit groups in mostly North Central and Northwest, where the most recent one occurred, the one in Niger, North Central, the one in Kebbi, Northwest. Now, if it's those ones, their motive is usually commercial. But there is also a cultural element that, unfortunately, we are not discussing enough. So these groups are siloed into camps, and each camp has a leader. And the profile of that leader is usually determined by the type of activity he conducts. The higher, for instance, he is able to take abductees, the more his profile increases. So sadly, and I don't mean to be a harbinger of bad news, what happened in Niger State is the first time in our history that we're seeing this huge number of abductees, almost about 300. Yeah. So the perpetrator of that act, his cultural profile has increased. That means other camps too, commanders in those camps will be seeking to outbeat him going forward, to also do something higher, so that their cultural kind of profile would increase. So these are some of the factors that has led to where we are. Perhaps in the course of our conversation, I did talk about the vulnerability in the educational institutions. Maybe we'll come to that and understand.
We'll talk more on that.
The vulnerabilities and what we can do to reduce those vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Yes, it's quite interesting, the points you've outlined. We've talked about this issue numerous times on Good Morning Nigeria, and it keeps happening. When it happened, and I said, not again, please, not again, because we've sort of relaxed. We're happy that our kids are in school and then the schools are safe, but suddenly this happens. Let's bring in Dr. Yahuza into this conversation. Dr. Yahuza, can you give us some of the key issues now to examine when revisiting the Safe School Initiative? Because I know you have researched well, and you are part of the Safe School Initiative. You know so much about that. So what are the key issues we need to examine today as we discuss this issue today?
Well, there are 7 outlined key issues that we need to look inward. One, the policy itself, how the policy was composed, I think there are some other ingredients that need to be revisited. That is one. And two, the implementation. The implementation of the policy is good when you look at the package, but the implementation process, when you look at the responsibilities assigned and how the lack of integration between the states, the federal and the local governments, as well as even the SBMC, that is the School-Based Management Committee. And then number four, monitoring and evaluation and assessing whether we pilot it into to some few schools that are really vulnerable, like mentioned by Dr. Kabira Adamu and the rest of it. And number four, environmental. Do we really look at the environment where the policy is expected to operate? And how sure are we that we are really considering those environments? And then number five, where the policy is situated in terms of implementation. I guess as much, and I have mentioned so many times that the component of the policy is supposed to be under the auspice of the Minister of Education, not really the Minister of Finance. And then number six, we need to also look into what are really our targets. What do we want to achieve? And what are the vulnerability? And issues related to funding, how much do we have and for what purpose? And are we really focusing and targeting into the states where we have these issues of vulnerabilities, like states of in the northeastern part of the country? You have Borno, you have Yobe, and probably to some extent partially Kasebochi. And when you come to the northwestern part of the country, you also look at the states like Zamfara, Kebbi, Katsina, Sokoto, and then when you go to the north central and Kaduna to some extent, and when you go to north central, you prioritize Niger, Kogi, Nasarawa, and then also in the northeastern part of the country, also take into consideration state like Taraba. However, yes, of course, it has. We have been implementing the the policy for some time. Sorry, but what are really the effectiveness? What is the performance? How do we? What really do we have on ground? I'm concerned the implementation of the policy is an outright failure, because I am always in the downstream where we have the schools that are really vulnerable. I just came back sometimes not quite long from the northeastern part of the country, and what I see in Borno, you can't go to Borno and tell me that you have anything like that policy. So I think these are part of the issues. There may be many other issues that we need to look inwards, but I think these are the key.
How much of the initial commitments, on the Safe School Initiative from 2014 to 2025 has been implemented so far? In your opinion, let's get your assessment on that.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I can probably say maybe 6%, if at all there is. I can rate it as 6%, based on my community knowledge, because I spent more than 80% to 90% of my lifetime at the macro level, within the communities, at the polling unit level, political ward level, and the local government level. So I'm always in the community, in practice. Not that I'm generating the information for others to give me the information. I see it myself. So as far as I'm concerned, the maximum, and in the first quarter of the year, the second quarter of the year, the third quarter of the year, and the last quarter of the year that we are, I visited nothing less than 400 local governments out of 774 physically.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Dr. Getso. We'll get back to you. Let's come back to the studio. Dr. Adamu, earlier on you were talking about the issue of vulnerability of most of the schools, and which made them to be soft target. How do we begin to check all this, soft target? What can government do actually to ensure that these schools, the pupils, are safe? Right now, about 41, government schools have been closed because of this latest development. You can imagine what impact it will have on the educational development of the pupils as well, which means that they are not going to school and they are become a challenge to themselves, to their family, and to the society. So how do we begin to revamp this?
And just to, further add to the predicament, we are adjudged to be the country with the highest number of out-of-school children before this incident started. So that means, unfortunately, we're going to remain in that category.
Unfortunately.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel. The Safe School Initiative, for all intents and purposes, is a good initiative. It comprises about two other very critical instruments. The Safe School Declaration, which we signed into, I think, in 2019 and was ratified in 2019. It's an internationally driven program that we signed up to, which, again, for all intents and purposes, it's excellent. The second one is the National Policy on Safe, Secure, and Violence-Free School, which was introduced in 2021. We brought the entire world to Abuja here, and on the sidelines of that event, we introduced this national policy on safe, secure, and violence-free school. And interestingly, with an implementation guideline. So we were aware that perhaps implementation would be a challenge. And so those who crafted that policy took time to bring up an implementation guideline. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The Safe School Initiative is an excellent piece of work. And in fact, from what I'm hearing, other parts of the world, including the developed Western world, is coming to Nigeria to learn. From that Safe School Initiative. So to respond to your question, what we need to do is to implement the Safe School Initiative. And one thing I would just like to add to Dr. Getso's intervention is the fact that it's not a federal government-driven program alone. It also has the component of the state governments. And so perhaps this is the time to, implement what we call this all-of-government approach. The 2 and 3 governments, actually, because education, as you know, is on a concurrent list, so all levels of government,
federal, state, and local.
And local do have a role to play. And in this instance, the number of private schools, I stand to be corrected in this, in Nigeria are probably more than the number of public schools
now
that we have. So that means private players too, proprietaresses and proprietors of schools would also have to join the Safe School Initiative. Now, there are several aspects of the Safe School Initiative divided into different roles. And just like Dr. Yahuza mentioned, it's a little bit amazing and surprising that the stewardship of that program was placed in the Ministry of Finance. And I'm hoping that you will invite that individual. I think she's a assistant director or deputy director, or maybe even a director now, because I haven't spoken to her in a while, so I'm not sure what position she is. I'm hoping you will invite her. Let her tell Nigerians how she's been able to manage that post, the post that was given to her to support the implementation of the program. And I can understand probably the philosophy behind giving the Ministry of Finance the stewardship because of funds. As you very well know, sometimes even if funds are budgeted, the release of those funds can be a challenge. So maybe that's why the Ministry of Finance were given that responsibility. But of course, it was the idea is that she would coordinate together with the Ministry of Education, together with civil society organizations. Interestingly, and I'm sure probably Dr. Getso would fall in this category. When I trained beneficiaries, trainees on the Safe School Initiative, it was a civil society organization that invited me, not even the government. It was in Kano, and they brought all the schools from the local governments in Kano, I think about 44 of them, and we trained them. Okay. So why I brought this up is there are layers of intervention under the Safe School Initiative. In terms of the physical security component, which speaks directly to your question, number one is the existence of physical perimeter fence. In the implementation plan, the dimensions of the fence is provided. The integrity of the fence is provided. So all the school committee needs to do, which is also envisioned under the program, is to pick up that implementation guideline and then seek to construct such a fence. The second part, which I think is also absolutely important in terms of what we need to do, there is a vulnerability assessment should have been conducted. And in today's world, that vulnerability assessment, I'm hoping, would be lying on a digital device, on a map. that I can pinpoint. If I'm interested in, let's say, my local government, which is Tambuwal in Sokoto, all I need to do is, the custodian of that document should be the civil defense. I should be able to just put my finger on Sokoto State, expand the map, and then bring out Tambuwal local government. Then I should be able to see all the schools in Tambuwal local government. Now, what was envisioned under the Safe School Initiative is that we would have levels of risk in terms of the vulnerability of those schools. So School A, good physical security posture. Level 2, as an example, maybe weak or medium physical security posture. Then level 3, non-existent physical security posture. So that tells me, as a state governor or as a local government chairman, if I want to improve security in my schools, I start from the bottom to increase. So that was what was envisaged under the plan. Now, we've been told that by the civil defense that they have done that vulnerability assessment. They haven't shown, at least not to my knowledge, anyone. So I'm hoping that they will come.
They are not here because they were invited, actually.
Yeah, they told us that they've done it. That's repeatedly, I think.
But you don't have it on record.
It's not there. And even when you go online in an attempt to get it, you can't get it. So if in reality they've actually done it, they should present it so that it can be critiqued. The essence of that assessment is to assist in planning. It's useless to everyone if you've just done it and then you've kept it to yourself. This third component is the rapid response and early warning systems that should have been implemented in schools. Now, we've been told by UNICEF in a report they did, I think, two years ago, that only 37% of the schools they audited have those early warning systems and across Nigeria. And I think the fact that we're dealing with a situation in Niger State, a situation in Kebbi State, would attest to the efficacy of their report. If there were early warning systems, the students would probably have known what to do. The teachers too would have known what to do. Non-academic staff would have known what to do. The community itself would have known what to do. So why I took time
when you say would have known what to do, are you saying that because one of the things that some of the guests discussed last week, Wednesday, was that there is a need for the schools, the pupils, even the community to be trained on security,
So that was what was envisaged under the Safe School Initiative. All of these components, these layers, will be trained on what to do. As an example, a hibernation center. The school should be able to identify a hibernation center. They should be able to train these pupils to say, okay, if you hear this alarm, it means there is danger. If, it could be a security
So there should be a drill like...
Exactly. A drill that would inform every member of that community. Remember, there are students, there are academic staff, there are non-academic staff, there are vendors, there is PTA, parents. Every member of that school has a role to play. And under the Safe School Initiative, we should have trained them on what to do. And the amazing thing, Jumai, is that this is contained in the implementation guideline. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
So what's the problem that we're having
implementation
is
so,
key.
I know we've not reached the point for recommendation, but I would want you to invite the woman in question, who is in the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
It will be good to her, as well as the civil defense, to talk to Nigerians.
And we've been inviting the civil defense.
11 years since this program was initiated. And we're still discussing abduction of over 300 pupils. So Nigerians deserve an explanation. And more importantly, I'm hoping that the federal government would audit the program, do an investigation, an independent one, not necessarily by the Minister of Education or by any of the active players. Set up a committee and one that would have the authority to look into critical aspects. How much was disbursed in terms of funds? Who got those funds? What did they use those funds? Because I've heard the woman in question. I've heard her mention the amounts she's given to the different stakeholders, Ministry of Education, even civil society organizations, and they are in billions.
144 billion.
That's just one component of it. When it was started, the money that was envisaged, I don't want to go into that, but let's just suffice to say we need to audit that program.
Okay. Let's pause here and bring in Dr. Getso into this conversation. Dr. Getso, you've listened to the points raised by Dr. Kabir Adamu, on the coordination mechanism, between federal, state, and local authorities to protect children. And now, it started in Chibok, Dapchi, and all that, but it's beginning to, abduction is beginning to expand across the country. So how can this strategy now be expanded itself to accommodate the 36 states of Nigeria and, of course, the FCT, because we really don't know where it's going to happen next?
The reality is, if we really want to implement this policy, we need to look at many issues. One, revisiting the school-based management committees, and then looking at the realities on ground and dealing with the situation.
Bring down the audio of your device that you're listening to so that we can hear you. You're not audible enough.
The truth of the matter is, we have very good documents in terms of preparing the policy, but we didn't take into cognizance. When I hear this, that we have what is called a safe school initiative, when I go around to the communities, when I see the physical looks, and when I see the situation, the pupils, they move into the school. And when I look inwards the curriculum, I was a teacher for 16 years at a various level, right from the nursery up to the tertiary institution. And I believe what I'm seeing now, what we have on ground, in terms of issues related to implementation, I think we are just deceiving ourselves that we have a policy of safe school initiative. Yes, of course, let all the countries in the world come to Nigeria. When they into the communities where the beneficiaries are supposed to be, don't see anything virtually, because nothing is on ground. If you say you are giving money to the police or to the civil defense, these are institutions that are they themselves, they are not even organized. There are a lot of challenges on how they relate, on how they even understand the concept itself. So how do you expect somebody who doesn't really understand the concept or the document or document somewhere in the shelf to implement what he doesn't understand? So there are so many complex issues. As far as I'm concerned, it is either we move this policy to Ministry of Education and then repeat it on piloting it from the macro level, that is from the way we do our leadership recruitment, taking into cognizance maybe pilot to some of the polling units geographical location out of 10 in the selected local governments. Maybe you test it in maybe 5 polling units out of 10 or 3 out of 10, 2 political words out of 10, and then you come back and review what were the results, what were the outcomes. I get confused when I hear the amount of money being spent or being distributed to those agencies. Because, like I said, I have visited nothing less than 400 local governments, and nothing less than more than almost 600 political words, or even more than that, within the couple of first quarter, second quarter, and the third quarter and the present quarter that we are. But when you go, there is nothing there. Nothing is zero. There is nothing on ground. So I believe when you start to sample the opinion of the community members, and even when you ask some of the civil defense staff working at the periphery of the down level, when you ask them, do they know anything self-school initiative? They don't know. So I wonder, we keep talking on something that is not there. We have been putting the money. I had that Senate committee, Senate have set a committee to Dr. Kabir Adamu has outlined. Yes, of course. But the problem is, how many committees have we been setting, and what were the results, and how do we use those findings of those committees? Results, yes, of course, we can set committees, but not really by Senate. You need to look at the experts who will critique.
We'll pause you there for now until your network gets better so that we'll return back to the studio where Dr. Kabir Adamu is seated. You know, there were arguments, you know. He's saying they are just not there, they're non-existent. And there were arguments we had over the weekend with some of my friends when we were discussing issues at least. And some of them said, Jumai, would it be better if the children of the higher ups are in these schools, that these children are being kidnapped, and maybe the Safe School Initiative would be implemented? Because 2014 to now, if their children are in those schools, do you think it will not have been implemented? What do we do about, private schools? You said the numbers even higher than government schools. Is it propagation of private schools that nobody really cares now about, government schools, especially in the local government areas? I keep asking, how can you move 300 and something people at a time, without attracting any attention from the community itself?
You've asked me so many questions in this one statement,
yes.
but let me give you a message to give your friends. Those who manage our affairs don't even have their kids schooling in Nigeria. They are abroad. And I think that's one of the greatest dilemmas that we face as a people. Mm-hmm. Those who are deciding our future are not affected by the decisions that they take. Perhaps, and I know it's been mooted, even in the 10th Assembly, that perhaps we should make it a criteria for elective positions for anyone who wants to run. Let at least his kids school in Nigeria. Let him go to hospitals in Nigeria.
Public hospitals.
Hospitals.
Public schools, not just schools in Nigeria, public schools.
So I think this is one of the dilemmas that we are confronted with. Yes. Perhaps if their kids were schooling in public schools, they would take this matter more seriously. As you know, I founded and run Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. In the 11 years since Chibok abduction happened, we documented 14 incidents of mass abduction. Out of those 14, over 2,000 students have been taken. The good news is that a significant number of them, almost about 80%, were recovered. Only about just 20% are still out there in the hands of the bandits. And I think the highest number is actually the Chibok incident. Almost all the others are commercially driven once the ransom is paid, and then they would release them. So that kind of gives a little bit of hope. But then the trauma that these students are subjected to. In the case of the one that happened in Burning Kebbi, not the recent one, the one that happened a couple of years ago, then came back pregnant. Mm-hmm. These were girls around the age of 14, 15, 16, came back, traumatized, pregnant. So that's the reality of our situation. And I think the message is to our political office holders to take this matter seriously. Our future as a country is being jettisoned. Any country that cannot invest in educating its children is not likely to have a good future. And that's where we are. I started this, my intervention by reminding us that we are currently occupying #1 position in terms of out-of-school children. This situation is not going to help our future. We need to address it as quickly as possible, and the instrument for addressing it is already at our disposal. I think it's high time we ensure that every member of the society who is responsible for implementing this Safe School Initiative actually does what he's supposed to do. And those ones that are culpable in terms of they've collected money but they've not done what they're supposed to do, let's do the needy. Let's try them and jail the ones that needs to be jailed so that it becomes deterrence for others who may want to.
You're saying heads should roll.
Because most of the time, from what you have said, it's like most of the actors that are supposed to implement this Safe School Initiative program lack the adequate knowledge of what it entails. So how do we begin to, because you need to involve the community, just like you said. You need to involve the parents. You need to involve the schools, and also the pupils themselves. So there is need for a complete awareness, to be done for proper implementation. So how do we go about this? Because it's actually the big problem here. Because until that is done, and even the society is aware of it, then we begin to have a solution to what we are talking about.
Forgive me, I'm laughing, but it's ironic that everything you said is actually contained in the Safe School Initiative. Allow me to read from a component of the Safe School Initiative, which talks about training and sensitization. It envisages that teachers, students, and community members would be trained on personal safety, bullying, conflict resolution, and emergency drills, as well as psychosocial support for traumatized students. So, again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's not forget that this was introduced in 2014. It was revised, I think, in about 2020, 2021, after we signed up on the national policy on all, and then, of course, they set up the implementation function and gave it to Ministry. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have everything it takes. If you pick one after the other, all the components, especially the implementation components within that program, everything we've discussed here so far is contained in that document. The challenge is one of implementation, which is unfortunately the nemesis of Nigeria. We would have beautiful policies, but implementation is a challenge. So the key is actually in M&E, monitoring and evaluation. If we can pick that implementation guideline and develop M&E tools from it that cuts across the federal, state, and local government levels, and then go about making sure that we hold accountable all the players within the various strata, the federal, the state, and the local government. And I'm hoping that the president will look at this matter with the urgency that it deserves. We can't continue in this manner. Our future is being jettisoned. Students who are supposed to be in school, I mean, as a parent, all of us here,
of course,
as parents, you're not likely to leave your kid if they're attending a public school, because you love your kids. So the likelihood, as at Saturday, I counted 10 states that have shut down schools. 10 states as at Saturday. The ones that publicly announced it. I'm almost certain there are some that would quietly...
That's besides the federal...
Well, the federal government has come out to say that it did not give out that directive. That is, there's a lot of fake news going out at the moment.
There's a lot of fake news.
So the federal government has said that it did not issue that directive. We're not sure whether it was issued and rescinded or it in reality didn't issue. So let's go with the ones we are sure of. 10 states as at Saturday. So we need to take this matter more seriously.
In that Safe School Initiative, is there any support system for students who are adopted and their families?
So like I mentioned, this psychosocial support for traumatized students is meant to address that. And I believe some states, I'm aware that Kaduna State and a few other states have set up such systems for psychosocial support for victims. Even this most recent one, that's for a church, the one that happened in Kwara, when the governor released a statement, he did indicate in that statement that the victims have been offered the psychosocial support. Whether the reality is that they were offered or not, we don't know, but at least in that statement he admitted to the fact that they've been offered psychosocial support.
We hope so, because there's more to meet that, to eat than meets the eyes. Yes, and we need to remind our viewers that we need your contributions. You can send your messages or your comments to the number on the screen so that we'll be able to read out your questions or contributions to our guests so that they can respond to it. And Dr. Getso, is he there? Okay, Dr. Getso, if you can hear me now, we've talked about the community itself where these schools are situated and the level of awareness that is out there on the Safe School Initiative. Not just about the school itself, but the community, because when they abduct these students, they pass through the communities. So how can these communities be better integrated into school protection efforts?
I think there are 3 things to do. One, there is need to identify the affected community and also conduct a kind of maybe a ward level sensitization meetings where they can be, the communities can be mobilized to understand and to know about the policy, and then to have basic information and basic guidelines on how to kind of participate in the policy implementation. That is one. 2, there is need to have a kind of a feedback mechanism where the engagement between the school management and the security institutions and the community members will have a kind of a coordinated mechanism where they will be having a review meeting and discussions and assessing the risk and the mitigation factors. And number 3, there is need for the local education authorities to kind of have an engagement with traditional and religious leaders. So those traditional leaders will be making it like one of the topic of discussions during the monthly security review meeting. This monthly security review meeting is happening every month in each and every local government that we have in Nigeria, where you have the presence of all the security agencies, all the traditional leaders from the macro level up to the district level. The meeting is still taking place, so it should form part of the agenda of discussion. The issues related to vulnerabilities and the issues of the Safe School initiative, or rather, even at the community base, they should have another system where communities will also serve as volunteers, or you engage some of the youth to train them to serve as volunteers, whether maybe to give them some token or to build their confidence and trust to understand that it is their own responsibility. I find it very difficult to understand why schools are being shut down, because it's like we are encouraging the criminals. It's like government is telling them that we lack the capacity. We cannot accommodate your challenges. So what we do is to shut down the schools. And like mentioned by Dr. Kabir Ademo and all of you during the discussion, as you discussed in the studio, that most of those who are implementing or who are making the policy, they are not really directly affected by the policy, because their children are not schooling, even in even the secondary education. They send them abroad. So they don't know, and they don't go out. They sit in Abuja, they sit to their computer, looking at their computer, and make decisions. We go to these communities. So there is need to have improved synchronization, partnership, and kind of coordination mechanism between the community members and the schools-based management committees. That school-based management committee is very, very essential in a kind of improving the Safe School initiative or implementation of the Safe School initiative. But how effective? What are the performance? What do we do? Where is the assessment? What have we, where is the review? What do we do? Actually, I feel like crying. When you go down, there is nothing. The communities are not aware, they don't know. So you need to carry them along. There is what has been called as ward level development committees, which is still in existence. There is settlement development committees, which are still in existence. Those are structures that has been set up by UNICEF before. So I think the Safe School initiative should take advantage of those committees. You don't need to set any committees. So those committees will be included, and then they should be utilized as a ladder in order to sensitize the community to understand, and then improve working relationship between the school management, the school-based management committee, as well as the local authorities, local education authorities, and the zonal levels. And you must have a kind of a simple distress phone numbers shared with the community in case of such issues, even though it is not all about having the numbers. Who pick the number and who respond to the number, the phone number, even if you have the distress call, because there are so many challenges, so many in terms of community engagement and community participation. So it should be a kind of community driven, whereby the community will be encouraged and their capacity will be built up so that they can drive, you can have a drive from the community. So it will be community initiated, community driven, and build the community for ownership, to own the process and own the system and believe that it is ours. And at the same time, those policy implementers and policy makers, like mentioned by Dr. Kabir Adamu, there is a need for them to be forced a kind of a condition, to have a condition that their children must be in those schools, and the public schools, in the public tertiary health facilities, and so on and so forth. Until and unless you have some of this and many other things, then you will have the community participation realized, and then you will have the policy. You will see something. But actually, when you go to the macro level, when you go to the political wards, when you go to the schools at the down level, when you go to the school, even at the local government levels, you realize that there is issues related to managing disaster, managing if there are maybe any situation, children even use, many of the fences are broken. So there are a lot of issues. In fact, it's quite disheartening and frustrating.
Yes, Dr. Getso, it's quite disheartening and very frustrating. And we are all hoping that very soon we'll be able to have a solution to all these challenges that we are having in our schools. We already have some comments and questions sent by some of our viewers, which we will read out so that our guests can respond to them. This one says, "Good morning, Nigeria. I am happy for this program. I would suggest that civil defense should be introduced and made compulsory in secondary schools. Unfortunately, the civil defense people we invited they are not here to further, educate us on what they are doing." Good morning. This second one says, "Good morning, Nigeria. This is an interesting discussion. Please, how can individuals and communities join the Safe School initiative?" Yeah. Then this one is says from Chike Dim, is from Warri Delta State. It said the recent spate of adoptions of students in schools is worrisome. Parents are getting more concerned on the safety of their kids' words in schools. Like I emphasized in the part 1 of this topical issue, government needs to expedite action by providing adequate security in schools, especially those hotbed states of banditry and kidnapping. It's heartbreaking that students who are minors are more vulnerable and are being targeted by this unscrupulous element. These children under threat are the future of this nation, will put the future of this country in jeopardy if we don't protect them. Do you want to respond to some of this?
No. Okay. Before you respond, we have to take a break.
Okay. We'll go for a break. When we come back, we'll have our guests respond to some of these comments. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're still on to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And we are still discussing the Safe School initiative. And we have our guests still here who are throwing more light into the discussion. Before we went on break, we took some of the comments from some of our viewers, which you were going to respond to. Maybe you can do that now.
Yeah. So let's start with the civic education component, as mentioned by one of the contributors. I think that's a good initiative. I'm aware that the National Orientation Agency is putting together a certain intervention that will probably address that. The idea is to have at both the primary and secondary school level, and probably even at the university level, certain elements of courses that would, as when we're growing up, for instance, social studies. Yeah. Then I think at the university level it was, I've forgotten the name of the course, but it's a 101 that every fresher in the university
I've forgotten myself all the age.
is meant to take, and it was a compulsory course.
Yes.
So you take it, and it reminds you.
It's a 4-unit course.
Your civic responsibilities. So I agree totally with the with the contributor. I think the current crop of youths that are coming up have not benefited.
We used to have man o' war then in schools then.
So those are all aspects that could help. Man o' war is still in existence, but how well it has integrated into our systems, I'm not sure of that. So again, I agree, and I'm hoping National Orientation Agency, one of what has come out clearly is that the Ministry of Education does not need to reinvent the wheel. Or in this instance, the Ministry of Finance, as you know, ridiculous that this sounds, must not reinvent the wheel. Some of these things can be done by sister ministries. This, as an example, is something that the Ministry of Education can drive, but with the support of Ministry of Information. If National Orientation Agency already has an intervention, then embrace it and just see how you can make it functional for your own purposes. The second component regarding how members of the community can join the Safe School initiative.
Individuals and communities.
So the school-based security management committees, the way it's envisaged, it's going to have membership from different components, including families, including PTA representatives. So I'm calling on first the Ministry of Education, but also the civil defense. Civil defense has a platform for, as it were, managing private security companies. I wish they were here to defend this, but they're not here. Available records show that the special squad that they should have created to support protection of schools under the Safe School Initiative only has 1,050 personnel.
Wow.
I repeat, 1,050.
Across the country. That's grossly inadequate.
Inadequate. So again, back to we don't need to reinvent the wheel. If that is the supervisory body for private guard companies, why wouldn't they incorporate private guard companies into that squad to support them in protecting schools? And then this competition that I'm seeing between them and the police, because the police too went to create its own squad for protecting schools. I don't think that's necessary. They should work together. I don't know the number of personnel that the police is dedicating to that. But like I said, if we have private guard companies that are numbering almost about 3 million, let them incorporate them into that system. Come up with a standard. Once any private guard company meets that standard, then they incorporate it into that program so that in a very short time we'll have enough numbers. There are other organizations that can also support. The Legion, they call them, the
Legion of old...
Exactly.
Retired
So
officers.
they're also there. I know they're a little bit aged, but these days you see very young persons in the
and we're not making very good use of them.
Exactly. So I'm not sure which ministry is supervising this particular initiative, but those are areas that we can quickly pull from, and so that we have a reasonable number of operatives that we could deploy to support this purpose. But to the writer's question, there are platforms that parents and Nigerians can contribute to. The most visible one is this school-based management committees.
Okay, let me before I get to Dr. Ihuza, so let me take some of the remarks and comments from our viewers. From Ahmed Babajikwa from Maiduguri, he said, in this moment of relief and hope, as we celebrate the safe return of the students from Kwara and Niger states, our nation's spirit is uplifted. We commend our government, the diligent intelligence community, and our brave security operatives for their commitment and courage. The fight is not theirs alone. True and lasting security is a shared duty. It is imperative that we all become active participants in safeguarding our communities. Let us be the eyes and ears, vowing to provide timely and adequate information on any suspicious movement around us, and trusting in the swift response of our agents. And Lanre is texting from Lagos. He said, good morning, Ademola Jummai. Please, can government declare war against all these bandits, kidnapping, and terrorists? Thank you. And this one doesn't have a name. It says, schools in the developed world, particularly the UK, emergency drills are part of the weekly routine. In fact, even hospitals and care homes have to routinely drill staff on emergency and safety guidelines. In Nigeria, safety should be prioritized. And Nadop Wiyop from Jos, one of our regulars, said, what is the government's plan to coordinate with security agencies to protect schools when pupils and students eventually resume? What are the best practices for training teachers and staff on safety, emergency response, and de-escalation? What are the most effective ways to provide emotional and psychological support for students who have experienced trauma due to insecurity? What is the role of the Federal Ministry of Education in overseeing and ensuring compliance with the national policy on safety? Thank you so much for your service. God bless Nigeria. That's Nandom. We are from Jos. Dr. Ogeso, you've listened to some of these messages, and my colleague read some of them. Now, there's no originality in anything. We have to learn from other countries. So what, apart from, while you respond to these questions, what are the global models Nigerians should adapt? Because in places like Pakistan, Afghanistan, and of course, Colombia, we've seen how Safe School Initiative is taking shape to protect students in school. What can we do in Nigeria? Because we keep talking about implementation. It's just not working.
The priority shouldn't be only providing the safety for the school, but rather providing the safety to our communities. Because if our communities are safe, the schools will remain safe. I said it yesterday, I said it the day before yesterday, and I'm going to repeat myself today, that we know the criminals, we know where they are, we know who they are, and we can deal with them accordingly. We have two options. It is either they surrender their arms, or let's reach them where they are and deal with them accordingly, so that we have, if any government says that we don't know who they are, we don't know where they are, how do you reach out to them to negotiate the issue of releasing the children in Niger and the rest of it? There are individuals who are really behind what is happening, and government knows who they are, and they know who they are. So until and unless we sit to our responsibility and become a serious become serious, then we'll be able to handle this situation. We cannot manage the Safe School Initiative or whatever initiative we may have as far as our community remain vulnerable. Our communities remain vulnerable. And it's something we can manage. Nigeria have the capacity, Nigeria have the ability, Nigeria have all it takes to handle the situation. When you say unknown government, I always laugh, because I believe if they are non-government, they are not unknown government. They are within the communities, they are within the schools, they move around freely, unchallenged. So until and unless we are ready to handle these security challenges that are bedeviling the nation, that is the only way forward. Until and unless our leaders are ready to fear Almighty God and believe that once they are going to account for whatever that has been assigned as a responsibility to them. And until and unless we are ready to hold people accountable and responsible for what is happening, you cannot tell me that there are ungoverned spaces. Okay, what are the traditional leaders that are there? Are they not part of the government? What of the religious leaders? Are they not part of the component of the government? Even if they don't have the authority, they cannot instruct, or they are not instrumental to making A, B, C, D in terms of operational or practical. But what are you doing? Why are you utilizing them in generating other information? Since we know the criminals, we know who really abducted these children. It's not that we don't know who they are, whether they are ideological, whether they are criminals, whether they are being supported through either enemies within or enemies around or enemies at the back of the curtain. But how serious are we in managing the security in our communities? We only have a way forward to have a sincerity in purpose in everything we do. Once we cannot have that, we will never get it right. And I really sympathize with Nigerian government and Nigerians for giving the impression of shutting down schools. It's very bad. Why do we have to panic? Why do we have to panic? Even if it means going for operations to have some collateral damage, why can't we go on that? We know they are not in any, you don't have anything hide out. I made mention that on that day, and on the eve of the day, the children of Maga were to be abducted, I provided information at 6:04 p.m. that Dankosogu local government and the other local government around are at risk of very high attack. There may be a very high attack, but the negligence, the sabotage, and up till now, we have not held anybody accountable. Up till now, there has never been a single person that has been declared that is responsible for the negligence, is responsible for the sabotage against the state. The communities are there. The communities, if they are watching me, they know I was in those communities sometimes 3-4 weeks ago. And as far as I'm concerned, those criminals are spread all over those communities. They are still there in the Kosovo. They are still there in Rijau. They are still there in Maru. They are still there in Mashagu. They are still there in Mariga local government. They are still there in part of some of the areas where Governor of Kebbi keep arguing that there are no criminals in Kebbi State. We know they are there. Let's be sincere and honest. The communities are handcuffed. They cannot do anything. We have the capacity, we have the ability, and I believe the personnel that we have, if they will be given all it takes, they can be able to deliver. We have the capacity, we have the ability. We can do it. Let's be careful, because the future of any environment lies more on the ability to deliver education. If you don't have education, if we collapse, if our education system collapse, it means the total everything will collapse in the society. Why do we have to shut down schools? It's a weakness. It's a big weakness. And it will be very, very difficult to regain the loss of glory on this point. So we need to be serious. And the communities must understand that delivering the security or the security agencies alone cannot deliver. All hands must be on deck. But the communities are providing this information, because I have evidence that these communities provide information 24/7. Even as we are now, if I check I'm sure I will have nothing less than 100 messages from various. What are we doing? We have to find a systematic and be honest and sincere to focus on dealing with the situation on ground accordingly and ensure that we secure our communities. That's how.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Dr. Getso. You have actually dealt with a lot of issues here. You brought out a lot of issues that the communities especially must be safe. And these people, they live in the community know them. So why are the people not speaking out? Why are the people not talking? And you know, there's this thing by NOA, if you see something, say something. But some people have said that if they say something, then they will see something. So they are afraid to say
silence.
So they are afraid to say something. So there is a kind of a bit of lack of trust in the system. So how do we begin to rebuild this trust now? Because that is just where the problem is. What do we do?
So under the Safe School Initiative, the Civil Defense, the primary agency given responsibility for implementing the program, is supposed to set up an emergency call number. And if I remember well, it's supposed to be number 94. So just two numbers that everyone can call and report, a distress situation. I'm not sure that number is working at the moment. I'm also very concerned about the proliferation of emergency numbers.
94, you said?
I think so.
Just like 911?
Yeah, it should. So the 911 is one. We have 122, which is managed by the NCC, so Communications Commission. I believe that various states also have their different ones. Then you also have the very long 11-digit number. The police has, the Office of the National Security Advisor, DHQ, Defense Headquarters has. So I'm concerned about the proliferation. We should be able to have one functional...
Or maximum two.
Well, maybe two, but in most countries it's one they have.
Yeah.
There was a time I traveled to the US, and there was going to be, I've forgotten, but it was a weather event. Can you imagine that even with my Nigerian number, believe me, I got an emergency message telling me, I was actually in a shopping mall, and it told me which bunker to go to hibernate before the event passes. So that is how advanced countries have, reached, where I'm sure they were able to trace where I was. As a visitor, a Nigerian that was not even a US citizen, they had responsibility for me. So we need to, and I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I keep on saying that the Federal Ministry of Digital Communication, Innovations, and already has a system in place that the Ministry of Education, or in this instance again, the Ministry of Finance, can reach out to and say, what kind of technology can we introduce to support this type of distress calls? Yes, there is a concern, because the farther you go from the urban centers, the less likelihood you would see someone with a smartphone. So we need to be conscious of the type of technology we'll also introduce. It has to be a technology that is easily accessible and that the interaction level is very easy to understand. It's necessary, it's vital, but then what is even more important is the response capability. So the two have to go together, the early response system and then the early response system. In security standard, that response system shouldn't be more than 7 to 15 minutes. So the challenge, and this is the civil defense, ironically, is they should do a simulation. Map, like I said, the 774 local governments, go to the farthest local government in probably Borno State, in Askira Uba, and do Okukawa, and do a simulation and see how long it takes their rapid response squad, according to the layers, to go to that school. If it takes them less than 7 minutes, then they can clap for themselves. If it takes them longer than that, then they know they've failed. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. These things are doable. We just need to be serious about
We've seen it done. We've seen it done in
How
other
do we
countries.
build trust? Rebuild the trust? Because the people seem to have lost
in
trust.
30 seconds, so that we get to...
It's really about showing commitment. If the 3 levels of government can show commitment, our people are ready to follow. We are not a difficult people. Honestly, we are ready to follow. So we need to see commitment from our political leaders. Let them prioritize this issue. Someone has already suggested that the president should declare a state of emergency in education. Yes. I'm in support of that.
I'm in support of that too. And let's bring in Dr. Yage. So are you in support of a declaration of state of emergencies on education here in Nigeria? Like Dr. Kabiru Adamu is saying, we are followers. We follow the government. Anything that government says, yes, do this, we do that. And I will begin to put ourselves in the shoes of parents whose children are out there, who have been abducted, some of them, like Kabir Adamu said, they come back pregnant. After the TV jamboree of receiving them in government house and all, what should be done? Psychoanalysis, Kabir, social, yes. So, what do we do?
Sorry, come again with your question. I didn't get your...
I was thinking of putting ourselves in, in the shoes of parents who have lost, whose children are out there, who they are still expecting for their children to come back. And those that come back, actually, some of them come back pregnant, like Dr. Kabir Adamu said. So what should be done, after all the jamboree, in the government house that they have with, identifying clothes to show that they care. What happens? They follow up?
Well, I think it is really, I hope and I pray, and to the best of my knowledge, those that abducted the children in that of MAGA, they are part of the group that they don't allow abuse of the girls. I don't know that of Niger, but I believe that from the insight I have, it is believed that we may hardly have any from MAGA that may come back abused. There may be, I'm not sure, I cannot be certain, but I believe that those group, they don't allow. In fact, if anybody attempts, I know they can kill anybody who may attempt to abuse one of the girls. That's to the best of my knowledge. there may be some other things, or it may be something different. However, if that happens, I think there is need to have medical psychologists and then the medical personnel to guide and assist the parent in that regard. But I pray and hope that none will be abused. To the best of my knowledge, for the insight I have related to the group that I am confident the group that abducted the children from the secondary, I believe they don't allow their member to abuse the children, talk less of going to impregnate them or something like that. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that nothing like that will happen. But if it may happen, we need to bring in the medical psychologist and other things. It is really pathetic and really frustrating.
Hey, Dr. Yuzagetso, we thank you for your contribution this morning. He's a security intelligence and investigation expert. We appreciate you as always when we call upon you. You know, on our programs, you're always there. We hope to see you soon again. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Adamu,
30 seconds, your final words.
Your parting shot.
It's just to call on the various levels of government to take this matter seriously. Like we mentioned, perhaps declare a state of emergency in education. And while that is being done, to also conduct an audit to find out where we are on this Safe Schools initiative. And then, of course, the monies that have been given out, if those monies have been siphoned, whoever is responsible should be penalized.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, security risk management expert. Thanks for your perspective on this issue.
Thank you for having me.
We actually invited the civil defense, but unfortunately they did not turn up. We hope that next time they will be here to give their own side of the story. Thanks for joining us. I am Ademola Adeoye.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. Do have a wonderful week ahead.